Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Mike the Engineer, and today we are going to be making our first steps to putting Kerbals on the Mun. This is JNSQ, the 2.5x planet pack for Kerbal Space Program, and we are going to be loading up our save file and hopping straight into the vehicle assembly building because there are a few things that I forgot. Okay, well, not a few, just one thing in particular that I forgot about, and that would be an antenna, because our lander is unmanned, so it does have a crew probe in there, but we need some way of communicating with it. Not a crew probe, a probe core. So we need to be able to communicate with that probe core in order to be able to enter an orbit around the Mun and be able to rendezvous and dock with it. I mean, that's not strictly necessary, but it is going to make it easier. And we almost certainly will need it to be able to dock, or to orbit the Mun. Because I don't believe our comm center, our relays that is in orbit, are actually strong enough to push a signal all the way out there to a probe core without an antenna. So that's what we're doing. And now, with that done, we can simply hop straight into our launch, put on some music, and I will see you in orbit.
There is only one of you, only one of me. There's a million of those who won't let us be, but they're not gonna see me bleed. Cause baby, I got you. I've been beaten to the ground, dragged across the dirt. I've been scared to live cause some people never learn, but they're not gonna watch me burn. Cause baby, I got you. It's a new beginnings and a better life. It's the dancing underneath the disco lights. They can try but they can never take me down. Cause I'm not afraid, I'm not afraid, I'm not afraid to love, not afraid to love you. I'm not afraid, I'm not afraid, I'm not afraid to love, not afraid to love you. They always bring all the lonely, but with you here nothing can scare me. I'm not afraid, I'm not afraid, I'm not afraid to love, not afraid to love you. I will tell them what I'm feeling forevermore. I don't care about the feelings, not anymore. So let's show them that love is pure, no matter who it's for. It's a new beginnings and a better life. It's the dancing underneath the disco light. They can try but they can never take me down. Cause I'm not afraid, I'm not afraid, I'm not afraid to love, not afraid to love you. I'm not afraid, I'm not afraid.
Performance, a full-size keyboard, and a full-size display. And then, one of my favorite Steve-isms of all time happens. The guy just walks over to the counter like he owns the place, which he kinda does, and then he just pulls out a frickin' button and string delivery envelope and nonchalantly slides the MacBook Air out of it, revealing it to the world for the first time. What an amazing moment. And little did we know at the time, the first-gen MacBook Air was introducing a bunch of key innovations that would affect the future of the Mac line. But before we take a look at all that stuff, let's take a look at the specs of the first-gen MacBook Air. The MacBook Air featured a 13.3-inch LED backlit display at 1280 by 800 resolution and a full-size backlit keyboard. On top of the display is a built-in iSight camera, and inside there's 2 GB of RAM and a 1.6 GHz Intel Core 2 Duo phone jack. Not many ports on this thing, so don't expect to plug much in. At least Apple gives you some free conversion technology so you can adapt micro DVI to full-size DVI. Personally, I thought the door was kinda silly, but I guess it was necessary to help achieve the curved shape. Apple was going for? I guess Apple just likes I/O doors. They did the same thing on the first-gen iMac. But when Apple changed the Air design in 2010, they 86 the door, which was probably for the better. On the other side is a MagSafe port, and the 37-watt-hour battery was advertised with 5 hours of wireless productivity time. And all of this can be yours for the starting price of $17.99 US. The one spec that really stood out to me was the 1.6 GHz clock speed, simply because it was the slowest clock speed of any Mac at the time. But you gotta remember, this is a really tiny computer. In fact, the processor had to be specially engineered to fit inside this small package, which required Intel to make the CPU 60% smaller than normal.
How did we fit Mac in here?
So those are the specs of the first-gen MacBook Air. Now let's talk about the big changes that affected the future of the Mac line, and we'll just start with the elephant in the room. The integrated battery. MacBook Air was the first MacBook with an integrated battery, or as some people may call it, a non-user replaceable battery. MacBooks at the time, even iBooks and PowerBooks, had simple mechanisms to allow users to remove and swap batteries without tools, but the MacBook Air did not have this. It wasn't terribly difficult to remove the battery, but it's not as easy as just flipping a switch or turning a knob. This had rippling effects. Future MacBook models all lost the battery hatch, and future Mac models had the batteries glued in, which makes sense because Apple does make custom-shaped batteries to try to fill the volume as much as possible, and if you're also trying to shave thickness off the product, it's much thinner to use glue than to build frames and other housings around the battery compartment. So I think that's a fair trade-off. I know that's not everybody's cup of tea, but personally, the non-user removable battery has never bothered me. So with that aside, let's take a look at some of the other great changes the MacBook Air introduced. The MacBook Air was the first Mac notebook to introduce the unibody enclosure. Although this feature wasn't mentioned by name until black chiclet-style keyboard we still see today in Macs debuted with the MacBook Air. And along with the new keyboard is a new trackpad, which introduced new multi-touch gestures inspired by iPhone, such as rotate and pinch to zoom. And we still use these gestures every day on our newer Mac trackpads. And because Earth is important, I figured it'd be good to mention that the MacBook Air's product launch was also the first time Apple talked about their new environmental reports, which they continue to do at many future events. And now, we come to my favorite feature which debuted with the MacBook Air, solid-state drives. Although the MacBook Air shipped with a 4200 RPM 80GB hard disk drive as standard, on checkout, you could upgrade it to a 64GB SSD for $999. Remember, it's 2008. Be very grateful that price
to be in the right place, and we can launch, and I will see you up there. extra fuel tank. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be doing a modified Lown lazy method of docking. So we are of rendezvous, so we essentially were pushing our retrograde marker towards the orbit by slightly thrusting away from it. It doesn't really make sense when I'm talking about it, but if you actually do it and just practice it, you will get better. So what we're doing now is we are just getting close, and we can actually dock it. So that is pretty neat. So we have about 3,000 meters per second right now. I believe once we dock to it and we add its mass, we will drop down to 700-ish meters per second. But basically it's not going to be enough to do the full burn on its own. We will have to use the remainder of the original upper stage, the one underneath the lander, in order to complete the burn, but we have a lot more delta V to play with now. So we are just going to warp to our maneuver node, and we are going to start burning for the moon. And we can just speed this up a little bit. I'm actually doing this live as I'm editing. So we are just going to be raising our apoapsis up to the moon in order to be able to dock, not dock, rendezvous, and orbit the moon. And then in our next episode, we will be bringing crew over there. I actually meant to do it in this one, but like, there was some issues, some graphical issues that you will see in a second, and I spent a long time fixing that, so that's one of the reasons why this isn't like 2 days after the last one. I hope you guys like that. If you haven't seen it, go watch it. I basically did a simple MATLAB physics script simulation and brought it into Blender, and we're animating that. Okay, so you see the purple lines from the lander RCS? Yeah, I spent a lot of time trying to fix that, and I couldn't figure it out. I like deleted restock, I reinstalled it, I reinstalled the DLC that it came from. I just couldn't figure it out, so unfortunately this episode is cut a little bit short. But the next time, like I said, we will be bringing our crew to the Mun, and we will be landing, we will be doing science, we'll be doing all sorts of exciting things. But for now, we have this extra fuel tank in orbit. I'm gonna try not to leave that much stuff in orbit, so if I can, I'm gonna deorbit it. If not, it's not that big a deal. Sorry, Matt Loud. But basically, we are just lowering our apoapsis, or our periapsis, that is our lowest point, into the atmosphere, and we're just gonna watch this thing burn in the atmosphere. And because JNSQ is quite a lot bigger, and I haven't really done anything to modify the temperature values, the maximum temperature values that these parts can take is all going to burn. It's not like stock KSP where you might get like an engine bill or something to survive. No, it's all going to burn. Because we're coming in at, I don't have the UI up, but it's probably 10 kilometers a second or so. Somewhere around there, 8-9 kilometers a second. So it's basically all just burning. I hope you enjoy those fireworks. That's all I have for you for tonight. If you liked it, make sure to loved it, make sure to subscribe, and I will see you next time. Thank you very much, and goodbye.